Hey everybody, this is your host and welcome to the show. I am super pumped for today's guest. So we got Brent Bowers on, and Brent runs a company called ZechBuysHouses LLC, but that's just one of his many companies. And he does a lot with land development, land flipping, and all sorts of stuff. We're going to get into the story and all the different things. But first and foremost, one thing I do want to say about the guest is he was an Army officer for 8 years, so I want to firsthand be the one to say thank you so much for your service. Thank you for keeping this country the greatest country on earth. I know that's being challenged, but the work you did and the things you did helps to solidify that this will always be the land of opportunity. So I wanted to say thank you. And before we get into Brent's story, I want to talk about all of you, and I want to talk about your journey to becoming a rebel banker. And on that journey, all of you are gathering information, you're getting knowledge. That's why you're listening to this podcast. But I want to be very clear about one thing. Knowledge is not going to get you where you want to be. It's the application of the knowledge that you get. And I know all of you know this, and I know all of you say, oh, we already know that. But you know what? So few of you actually do this. I know factually that a lot of you will say you will take action on this knowledge, but you will not. So I'm going to challenge you by giving you something for free. I'm going to give you a copy of my new booklet, okay? Or you can get a copy of any of my books, Private Money Guide, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, or the new one. Doesn't matter. They're all free because we believe in giving, but you have to actually take action. To get this booklet free, you got to go to chrisnaugle.com. It's Naugle if you don't already know, and just click on the button to get this free booklet. Now, I know you're all thinking that doesn't take much work, and you're like, oh, that's easy, but how many of you will actually do it? That's what I'm after. So take the knowledge, get something for free by doing the work. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about with Brent, because he's put the work in. Clearly, being in the Army, you don't get there, you don't spend 8 years there without putting the work in. And today he's going to talk about how he entered real estate in, this is interesting, 2007. For all of you that are too young to remember, 2007 was the top of the real estate bubble. And then the next year it let loose and we had what was called the Great Recession. Now I know some of you are like, oh, that'll never happen again. We are in the exact same scenario we were in back then. So believe me, you want to learn a little bit about what Brent did then. But let's just let Brent tell the story. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me so much. 2007 was an incredible time. I wish I could say that I was like some bold hero out there buying all the deals, but I didn't. I actually kind of took a little bit of a break. I saw brokers getting out with 30 years experience, and I was like, holy cow. I was paying credit cards with credit cards, the power bill with the credit card, because I wasn't making many sales in 2008. So I went into the Army in 2009, went back to school and took a break in real estate till about 2013 because I was out of the country for 3 years, a couple deployments to Afghanistan, stationed in Germany. But 2013, I hit the ground running hard. But I did keep that one rental that I purchased in 2007. And eventually I sold that rental in 2019, never made a single penny off of that property because I bought it so high. I think sold it for about $1,000 less. Over 10 years later. And I had to evict a couple tenants. It got trashed a couple times. My windows got busted out. But here's what I learned. I learned to be a very smart landlord. So that's worth a lot of money.
Takeaway. But it's interesting that you said that. You know, you bought it in 2007, the top of a speculative bull market or bubble market, as you could call it. And it took you 10 years to break even. People don't realize that that's what happens when you buy at the top. So I definitely want to talk about that, but thank you for bringing that up and being transparent that, you know, a lot of people would just say, oh yeah, I had this rental and I did great on it. No, you're like, man, I had it for 10 years. I went through, hell and high water and I had to sell it for, pretty much break even or a small loss. It's crazy. People just don't understand what that means today because we've been in this crazy bull market for so long. Everything just seems like it can never, ever change. But you are in some really interesting spaces in what you do. And I love the industry and the different things with land flipping and everything else you're doing. So tell everybody a little bit about your businesses and what you guys do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you giving me, making me feel so good about that house in 2007. I actually owned it for 12 years, didn't even break even. I got a lot of tax write-offs from it, though. If you're looking for that sort of thing, I love when people are like, "Well, it's a great write-off." So you lose money is that how you make yourself feel better at night? Is that how you
It
sleep?
is.
No. I remember I came back from my first 1-year deployment. I was gone 364 days I got a 2-week leave in between, but it was like on the first 2 months of that deployment. And I come back, I had like $5,000 saved. $5,000 was a lot of money for me back in 2010. And all of it went to evicting this tenant and cleaning it up, fixing it up. But ultimately that led me to where I am today. And I call it the holy grail of passive income. Everyone tosses around this word passive income like it's just literally money that comes into your mailbox. I think that's outdated. I want the money to come into my bank account. I don't want to even go and collect the money. If they're late, I want late fees. I don't want them calling because the roof's leaking or the toilet's backed up. None of that stuff. And that is land for me. We have 114 notes paying us income each month. I've done about 289 land deals now in about 4 years. And they're so easy. People aren't there's virtually no competition and the sellers are not emotionally tied to it. So that's why I'm here talking to you today. I know you got to talk with Dan Haberkost as well. I'm excited to hear his podcast with you. He's doing the same thing as far as land as well. I think he's more on the development side of it. I like the passive side of it. I don't want to build on it. I don't want to change the zoning. I don't want to do anything but sell it to someone on a note. And it's all about the volume for me.
No, that's an awesome business. And, we also have a small land flipping business here that we ventured into almost 2 years ago. It's not something we put enough time and energy into, but we did it solely so that we could move money through our banking systems because we're big into the private banking space. So we basically run money through our banking systems, buy the land and do the same thing and just hold the notes on it. But you're way, way ahead of us in terms of that. I mean, over 100 notes paying you. That's a good day in the office, but that also gives you a whole lot of freedom if you choose to use it as freedom. And I know you're a family guy. Before we got on this, you were over there talking to your son about some things you guys are doing. So let's just talk a little bit about how you went from being an Army officer, which doesn't give you freedom. You're actually fighting for other people's freedom. And again, like I said, thank you for that service. But in doing that, you were away from your family. And then you came back and you found your way into this space. What has changed in your life, your family, because of the things that you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned time freedom. Most people do not understand that. And that doesn't mean I'm sitting around watching Netflix, but which, by the way, actually, that happened to me for the first time in probably 2 years yesterday. I actually sat down during the middle of the day and watched Netflix because I took a red eye home the night before, or that morning, I guess. So I was feeling guilty because I was watching Netflix during the middle of the day. I don't sit around. I'm going, people are always telling me to slow down. And I don't like when people tell me that. Don't tell me that. But that doesn't mean I'm just sitting around on a beach drinking a pina colada. I'm building other businesses. I'm hanging out with my family. We're driving down to Miami here in just a little bit. Going on vacations and experiences. But that's freedom for me. I think a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to retire and I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to sit on a beach. Well, I think Jim Rohn said it best. That's why the good Lord hasn't put that much money in your bank account, because he doesn't want you to stop. He wants you to go out and do good things. So that's freedom for me. I can get up tomorrow and plan exactly what I want to do. Someone else is not planning it for me.
But how did you didn't just go from 0 to over 100 producing notes. How did that journey happen? Did you need to have a bunch of money? What does that journey look like? Because when people hear that, they're like, oh my God, I want time freedom. Oh my God, I want a couple hundred notes paying me income every month on a passive basis. But there's a little bit more to that story. Can we dive a little bit into what it took to get there?
Chris, you're good at what you do. I love that you asked that.
A lot of experience.
It started with one. And you know how they say you either have a lot of time or you have a lot of money? Well, I was an Army officer. I didn't have a lot of time. And I was in the Army. I didn't have a lot of money. And I also just had a brand new baby. We bought a house and we moved across the country. So we were broke, man. So I was kind of flipping. I was, playing the wholesale game. I was trying to wholesale some houses. I'd run out on my lunch break for an hour and go and meet the seller. And if I didn't get the property under contract, I would never get it under contract. I was searching for answers. I was like, there's got to be an easier way to do real estate, a better way. Cause I had 7 doors at that time. And something is always breaking with a rental, roof's always leaking. And I'm like, and then I still had that one from 2007. I'm like, I am never and I didn't see the long run of it. I didn't see the long game. Like someone else is paying my mortgage for the next 30 years. It's going to be paid for free and clear. I couldn't see it at that point. I just saw the baby needing diapers and my bank account's like sitting at like $500. This is early 2016. And I'm an officer in the Army. I have 7 doors, a baby. I'm married. I'm just like barely over like going bankrupt. So I was searching for answers and I wholesaled houses, made some good money doing that. And I heard about a guy talking about land and how he was buying it for these crazy prices and like quadrupling his money overnight. And I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So I mailed a postcard to about 697 tax delinquent properties. They were land parcels. Well, in about it was about probably 2 to 3 days, my phone actually started ringing and it rang and rang and rang. And I had time to call about 20 of these phone calls back. And out of these 20 phone calls, I did 2 deals. The first one, the lady's like, look, I'll sell you the land for $285. Just take it. And I was like, okay. So I ended up meeting the husband. So I met the husband, super nice guy, retired CPA, didn't want the land. So he wasn't broke. He wasn't dumb or anything. Like he had a great career. He was just getting rid of the land. So I had no clue what it was worth though. So me and my wife went and looked at it and we had our newborn in the truck as well. Had no clue what it was worth still after I looked at it. So we're driving down the hill to leave the property and I call the closest real estate office. I'm like, they've got to know. The lady I got on the phone was so interested in it. She made me an offer right there on the phone for $5,000. Well, she said I could sell it for $10,000. And I asked her if I can call her back because I was just like, couldn't believe I was about to buy something for $285 and sell it for $10,000 on the MLS. So she called me back within like 2 minutes and I asked if she can buy the property. I said, what are you offering? She said $5,000. And she literally had me a purchase agreement. By the time I got home, she bought it on Wednesday and I paid the seller on Tuesday. So that's the first one. The second one was like a week later. I bought it for $500. $500. The lady gave me the price again. I'm not a good salesperson. She gave me the price and I put an ad on Craigslist that night for $500 down and $400 a month. And that is where my seller financing started. And I just kept rinsing and repeating. It started with that first one for $400 because you know what that $400 did for me? Not much, but it paid my truck payment. And me and my wife sat down that night, maybe it's the next day or something. And we were like, imagine if we could do this enough times to pay the mortgage and the light bill and the gas bill and the diapers. And then we did it. It was like, it took us almost like 8 months and we covered all of our expenses and we were 100% financially free in almost 8 months.
That's awesome.
That's where it started.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And, a lot of people would be like, oh, it just must be where you're living. But where were you doing this at?
I was doing it while I was stationed at Fort Carson and I had about a 2-hour radius. I was doing it in Pueblo, Colorado. I was doing it in Palmer Lake, a little bit further north of me. So I was really operating about 3 counties and I could drive to all these within about 2 hours. And that's what I recommend to my students. Start within about a 2-hour radius. If you drive 2 hours one way, you're going to hit a lot of land.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that they were just like small little wins, 400 here, 400 there, not swinging for the fences, not, trying to really like hit the home run. Like too many wholesalers today, no disrespect, but they're swinging for the fences. They get a deal under contract. It might be a decent deal because it's a very competitive market. And they're trying to literally just gouge people on what they're making because they're always swinging for the fences, which eventually, when it all shuts off, is going to be a difficult thing. Where you weren't, you were literally hitting base hits or even bunts and just like kind of building upon that. And that's a much more stable and definitely sustainable business model. And I love that you're teaching that to people as well. One other thing too that I really want to kind of talk about here is in your bio, you gave a quote. And this is something that you live by, and I'm just going to read it to the audience. It says, your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. So I hope everybody heard that. I'm going to read it again because there's nothing more important that you can ever take out of this podcast than this one statement. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. We live in a me society, okay, where too many people are out there for me, me, me. I want the Lamborghini. I want the bigger house. I want the money. I want the riches. I want the wealth. All of that can be yours because anything you ask of life, life will give you. If and only if you apply this one thing that you just heard me read twice, that Brent applies every single day. The only way you can have all the things that you dream of and all the things in life that you want is if you solve other people's problems first. And that is just simply giving. You have to give first, and you have to solve other people's problems first with nothing in return. When you do that, you will live the life of abundance. Brent, you gave me this statement. I live by this. I will die by this. And I want you to talk about what this means to you and what this should mean to the audience. Because a lot of people, if this is the one thing that I could teach, I'm America's #1 money mentor, so they say. And if I could just teach one thing for the rest of my life, it would be the principles and the laws behind that quote and how that will change people's lives.
Yeah. And I wish I created that quote. I totally didn't. I took it from The Go-Giver, the book called The Go-Giver, not to be confused with The Go-Getter. But I mean, we did it last night. I told you I took a red eye home. I was trying to take the night off, and I turned my phone off, and my partner, my acquisition manager, she runs the operation in Colorado, is blowing my wife's phone up. Like I heard it, like we missed 10 phone calls while we were putting the kids to bed. And I was like, what the heck? I'm just trying to take like 5 minutes, man. We're reading our kids like stories. And I hadn't been home for a couple of days. But anyhow, we had a seller crying. The seller was crying because the moving company was holding her stuff hostage. And this was a house we were buying. We buy houses too. But this was a house we were buying, and we needed to make that payment, the second payment, the final payment for her moving. And we haven't even bought the house yet. We have it under contract. And it's like 7:00 at night. And we had to put her interest first, what she needed. Like she's crying. Like she's like, they're holding her stuff hostage. They're telling her they're going to charge her $200 an hour if they don't get this payment. So like I had to like stop reading with my kids to go find a credit card in my wallet. And I couldn't find my card. I forgot I gave it to my wife. And I'm like scrambling and throwing cards everywhere in my office. But that's an example. Sometimes it's going to come at times when you don't want to do it, when you're trying to read a story to your kids. And luckily my daughter was understanding, and she waited patiently for daddy to come back in there. But there's an example right there. And you're going to get mad. Sometimes it's not always easy. That sounds great when you're reading that quote, but you just got to remember that's your quote when you're flipping credit cards all over the office, trying to find the right one to pay for this moving bill of almost $9,000.
Yeah.
So,
and it's funny because, in life we're tested a lot, and we have these opportunities, to give and, do this, what we're talking about, put other people first. But when it always comes at an inconvenient time, or it comes when we're not expecting it. But that's just life. I don't think there's anything in life that ever happens that comes when we want it to come. It always happens at the most inconvenient, unopportunistic time. That's just the way it is. And when you actually just take away the noise and you just focus on the opportunity, which the opportunity truly is your ability to give when other people need it. And that is what you need to be looking for. Instead of just going out and looking for the opportunity that solves your problems, you should be looking for the opportunity that solves other people's problems. And Brent, that's what you did. You found that opportunity at a terrible time. I mean, I have a 17-month-old. I can only relate to that on how crappy of a timing that would be, because my wife would be really upset if I took a call during that precious time that we can never get back. But, you did that. And, I wish more people could live and understand that simple rule. How do you go about teaching your students, and how do you go about applying that in your day in and day out business? Because obviously you're in business to make money, you're in business to get more real estate, more land. So how does that fit into your overall culture of what you teach and what you do every day?
Well, you said it best. All we're doing is solving problems. whether we're buying houses or widgets or candles, if we're buying it from a seller that's selling it, we need to buy it at a discount so that we can make money and make a profit. We have to solve a big problem for the seller. It might not be a big problem for us. Maybe we should call them challenges, but we got to get the monkey off the seller's back. Like 99 out of 100 people are not going to sell us a piece of land or a property or a house or an office building or a 19-unit apartment complex at a discount unless, 99 out of 100 don't need our services. It's that one person that we can, buy the house and rent it back to them. Like, we've got to solve a challenge for them. And that's all we're doing. We're looking for problems that we can solve ethically and morally, because there's a fine line too. Like, what is Peter Parker's uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility. So there's a fine line as well. Like, you got to treat these people right because they're down right now. And you don't want to kick them either.
Yeah, and let's go back. I mean, you were an officer in the Army, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this that are either in the military or ex-military or vets or something else. Like, and a lot of them, when that happens and they transition, from that lifestyle to, the next phase of their life, they're left not understanding what to do. And a lot of them land in, I don't want to call it dead end jobs, but jobs that aren't serving their ultimate purpose. So what would you say to your, I don't want to call them your colleagues, but other military men and women when they're making that transition? How would they find this freedom that you have found, and what steps should they take to do that?
Yeah. Well, first off, we might have just lost half of your listeners, anybody that's not an officer, because most enlisted don't want to hear what the officers got to say. Guys, I promise I was enlisted first. I was enlisted for 4 years and did the active duty green to gold. So I was enlisted half the time, the officer the other half. So I understand both sides of the world, and boy, did I have a lot more fun as enlisted. A lot less responsibility, a lot less people. I shouldn't say less responsibility. I should say less people yelling at me, honestly. Believe it or not, I got yelled at more as an officer. But how do you set your life up for freedom? Do what you do best. Like, do what excites you. Like, I get out of bed. Like, I was out of bed this morning at 5 a.m., did not need an alarm clock because I wanted to get up and get some answers. I knew I needed to get on my support group and answer some students because they were probably waiting on an answer. Like, that got me out of bed this morning. So do what's going to get you out of bed. Like, I could have went and worked and deployed some more and made a big boatload of money tax-free, but that's not what I wanted to do. Like, it wasn't about the money. I wanted to spend more time with my family. Like, so it might be a technology job. It might be real estate. It might be selling insurance. It might be, I don't know, going to Africa and helping people dig wells. So that's where your freedom comes, is where you can get out of bed in the morning without having to set an alarm.
I love that. And, one of the biggest things that I talk about nonstop, and today's episode's not about me and what I talk about, but you mentioned some things that I think just correlate very well. And, we teach being your own bank, taking back the banking functions in your life. Well, you're doing exactly that. You are being the bank, because what you're doing is you're finding these unique land deals or real estate deals, but we'll just focus on the land, because I think a lot of people, listening can wrap their head around a $500 piece of land or a $298 or $97 piece of land. Like, that's obtainable for almost every single person. Even if they're living paycheck to paycheck, they can find $500. And then you buy the land and then you put it out there, and you essentially become the bank by creating a note and by actually going out there and financing this land for this individual. And then they just exchange the land for monthly payments. Can you talk a little bit about some of the processes and procedures somebody would need to know in order to actually become the bank in this land business? Because I think the land business is more obtainable for most than buying actual real estate or 19-unit apartment buildings, because then you're talking big sticker prices. And really, folks, once you learn the fundamentals of a $500 deal, the fundamentals are identical for a $5 million deal. So, your mind won't tell you that. Your mind's like, that's way out of reach. That could never buy a $5 million 19-unit apartment building. And I'm just picking numbers out of the sky. But I could certainly do a $500 land purchase. So can you describe that a little bit and some of the key things that they need to do and the things they should not do, because there's so many pitfalls they can land in on this.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The 19-unit apartment complex or the $1.2 million land deals are just as easy as the $500 one, and I can attest to that. Like, we're there now. We're doing the bigger deals. It's easier to raise the money because people are attracted by big, cool, like, goals like that. So let me break it down though. Like, I had to build my belief. Because I thought it was too good to be true on like my fifth land deal. Like, the fifth one was a bank that said, hey, yeah, we'll sell you this parcel of land for $25,000. It was actually 44 acres next to Schriever Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. I wanted to offer 20,000. I knew the land was worth over 100. Like, I'm offering 20 cents on the dollar because that's how scared I was. I was like hoping they didn't accept it. Well, they accepted my offer, but they said, we're going to put it to 25,000. That was on a Friday night. I was so nervous because I didn't have the 25 grand. I thought the bank was going to sue me if I didn't buy it, but I got it under a signable contract where I could basically sell the contract. I know you said you've had some wholesalers on here, so your audience probably understands this. I was going to wholesale this land because I didn't have the 25 grand, and I didn't know what I know now, because my mother-in-law had the 25 grand, or my neighbor had the 25 grand, or probably my dad would have helped me too with that. But I didn't realize people had 25 grand when you were buying an asset at less than 25 cents on the dollar. So that's one thing I hope people get in their mind. When you have something at that big of a discount, it's kind of like if I told you, hey, Chris, I'm going to give you one of my Bitcoins. It's worth like 60 grand right now. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not tracking it. But you can have it for 30. Would you take it?
Yeah, of course.
And you can't see it. You can't hold it. Land, you can see it. You can farm it. You can ranch it. You can build a house on it, whatever. It's tangible. But I got it under contract. I went out and put signs everywhere. 44 acres, 38K, 38,000. Had it under contract for 25. So I was going to make a quick 13 grand. And I put out those signs with my phone number, 38K, 44 acres. I put out 33 of those signs. Before I even finished putting them out, I had a buyer that I met on the side of the road. We shook hands and did the deal. So there's one way. There's one way right there. You don't have to have the money. Way number two, here's another example. We talked about that, like the $500 deals. You run out of those small parcels of land.
That's for sure.
But you find the $5,000 ones, the land that's worth 15 grand, and someone will sell it for 5 grand. And you can go out there and put an email out there, or you can go to a meetup, or you can go and put it on Craigslist saying, hey, land's worth 15,000. It's 5 acres. I'll sell it to you for $5,000 down, and $300 a month. I just use my buyer's money to pay for the land. A third example, my grandma has 5 grand in the bank account, earning 0% interest. If I said, hey, grandma, I'll give you 6% on that 5 grand if you let me borrow it to buy this piece of land, and the land is going to be your security, grandma. The land's worth 15 grand. Here's an appraisal from a realtor, or here's a CMA from a realtor, comparative market analysis, or a broker's price opinion, whatever you want to call it. The one next door just sold for 15 grand in the last 3 months. We're going to use your 5 grand to buy it. I'm going to pay you 6% interest, and you're going to get a deed of trust and a promissory note from the title company protecting you, grandma. If I don't pay this payment, you can take the land.
Those are all awesome. And thank you so much for explaining that. I love option 2 because that's real, folks. Like what he just said, that's very real. And, like option 3 is also one of my favorites because he got to help his grandma. You get to solve somebody else's problem in the process. So now you're solving 2 people's problems, right back to your influence is determined by how you help other people's interests. Grandma had lazy money sitting in a bank account, which is the worst place you can keep money right now. So he was able to make that money work and at least pace inflation in today's world, which is, a crazy inflation rising environment. But, just these little things, you get to use what you do in real estate to then solve a lot of people's problems. And there's just nothing better than that.
And we're actually solving 4 people's problems. We're solving the problem for the seller because they probably need the money or they're tired of paying the taxes. We're solving grandma's problems because her money's making 0% and inflation is outrunning I can't talk today. Inflation is outrunning that, making that dollar less and less valuable every single day. She's helping my buyer because now we're going to give a buyer the opportunity to come in and make $500 a month for this piece of land that they want at 12%. So we're going to loan 15 grand at 12%, and they're helping me because I'm now going to make 12% interest on money that's not even mine. And I'm going to do this again and again and again, 114 times.
Yeah, amazing. And I love how you brought that. I love how you just described the 3 different ways that somebody can do that, because that allows everybody that's listening to really kind of look and not just take one path, but like you have now 3 different paths on how you can go out and solve people's problems and how you can benefit from that. And that's always how it should work. It should be a win-win, and it will almost always be a win-win because you are facilitating that and you're being the bank. And to be the bank, you got to also help some other people do some things that they need done, like grandma needs some extra interest on her money. The buyer needs financing for the land because they can't take a piece of land to the bank in most cases and get financing unless they do it with a construction loan. So it's just such an awesome thing. And you know, as we kind of get to the tail end, can you talk a little bit about how you help other people learn to do what you do?
No, thanks for asking that. I teach the tried and true method. I teach people how to buy this land at crazy discounts and turn around and either wholesale it like one of those examples or set up the seller financing. I mean, that's my passion. I want to see people have passive income as well, because once you take care of the mortgage payment and the light bill and the car payments, now you can go out and be like a little bit more aggressive in your investments. Like you can put some money towards gold and silver, things that don't pay you a passive income, or buy Bitcoin or whatever, crypto. Like it's allowing me to go out and invest in other businesses, invest in other investments. And, you know, me and a buddy are actually putting a fund together. I say a buddy, he's another Army officer, and he's still active, but he's done very well buying land. I got him in the land. We're actually about to start doing this for other people where they come in with a certain amount of money and we will buy the land and we'll be partners. Like they're going to be an owner of it. And there's a fee to this, but we're actually putting that together right now. We've already got 3 clients. Awesome. So there's another thing, but if they're interested in, you know, finding out if this is a business for them, if they want to set this up for themselves, obviously they can go and check my YouTube channel out. If they go search Brent Bowers on YouTube, I'm talking all land stuff on that YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like help me get this thing built up. It's 5 months now. And if they're really serious about getting started right away and they want to book a call, head on over to thelandsharks.com and schedule a call.
I love it. So folks, we're going to put those links up. And again, you know, I know the power of YouTube. It's my biggest source. So make sure you go on and subscribe to his YouTube channel and click the alerts. It doesn't cost you anything. And the value that I know he's putting up on there is exactly what you need. But just like I said it earlier, you got to apply that knowledge and actually put the time and the work in, because that's what successful people do, folks. They invest their time and they invest their money. And the ones that really make it are the ones that do both. So Brent, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this, for sharing those options. And, you know, folks, just get over there and check out his YouTube channel and also look at the different coaching programs and the partnership programs that may be available by just getting around the campfire with Brent and his team. So with that being said, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of the Real Estate Money School. And Brent, thank you for your time.